Sure. Here's a more detailed and engaging rewrite of your story. At a massive family reunion, surrounded by laughter and the smoky scent of barbecue, my husband, Alan, raised his beer and clinked it against a bottle for attention. The conversations quieted as he beamed, his voice ringing out with excitement. We're selling the house, and my mom is moving in permanently. The cheers erupted, claps of congratulations echoing across the gathering. His mother, Deborah, practically glowed with triumph, basking in the moment as if she had won a prize. I let the applause settle before tilting my head, a slow smile spreading across my lips. Funny, I said, my voice carrying through the crowd, I just sold it yesterday. The shift was instant, laughter cut off, smiles froze, and silence spread like a ripple through the sea of relatives. Alan turned to me, his brows knitting together in confusion. What? I reached into my bag and pulled out the neatly signed documents, holding them up for him to see. I sold the house yesterday. To a lovely young couple. They're moving in next week. For a moment, he didn't react, his eyes scanning the paperwork as if the words might change if he read them hard enough. Then his face drained of color. His mother gasped, clutching at her chest like the wind had been knocked out of her. You can't do that, she shrieked. Alan snatched the papers from my hand, flipping through them with growing horror. His fingers trembled as he realized the truth. Tell me you're joking, he pleaded, his voice barely above a whisper. I crossed my arms, my expression unchanging. I'm not. The cheers from earlier had been replaced by uneasy shifting, hushed whispers passing between family members. Alan's uncle cleared his throat, rubbing the back of his neck. Well, this is unexpected. Alan exhaled sharply, his jaw clenching. How could you do this? This was our house. I arched a brow. Funny, because you were planning to sell it without telling me. What was I supposed to do? Wait until you surprised me with a for sale sign on the front lawn. His lips parted as if to argue, but nothing came out. He knew he had no defense. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. We'll talk about this later. I met his gaze, unwavering. No need. The deal's done. That was when Deborah completely lost it. Her face contorted in rage as she spat. You selfish, ungrateful little. I lifted a hand, cutting her off. Careful. We're in public. She ignored me, whipping toward Alan. Do something, she demanded. Alan tightened his grip on the papers, inhaling sharply. Then, as expected, he tried to salvage control. This isn't final, he insisted. There's still time. We can call the buyers, tell them there's been a mistake. A laugh bubbled up from my chest, light and effortless. It's final. It's a cash deal. Signed, sealed, over. And then, as if the universe had been waiting for the grand finale, Deborah let out a dramatic gasp. Her hands flew to her chest, her body swayed, and then she collapsed. Panic spread through the family like wildfire. Someone yelled for water. Someone else fumbled for their phone, debating whether to call 911. Alan dropped to his knees beside her, patting her face frantically. Mom! Mom! I stood there, watching the chaos unfold, feeling nothing but the weight of my own liberation. I had spent years compromising, bending, and sacrificing for a man who never saw me, for a mother-in-law who treated me like an inconvenience. Not anymore. I turned on my heel, stepping away from the spectacle, exhaling for what felt like the first time in years. I had taken back control. And it felt glorious. This version keeps the essence of your story while adding more vivid descriptions and a refined narrative flow. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments. The thick Texas air hung heavy at the family reunion, the scent of slow-cooked barbecue mingling with the laughter of too many relatives crammed into one place. Alan, my husband, stood in the center, beer bottle raised like a victorious king addressing his court. His voice rang out, brimming with confidence. We're selling the house, and my mom is moving in permanently. The announcement was met with a chorus of cheers, hearty claps on the back, and approving nods. Deborah, his mother, practically glowed with satisfaction, her self-satisfied smile stretching wide. I let the celebration wash over me for a moment before tilting my head, my lips curling into a slow, deliberate smile. Funny, I said, my voice clear and calm, slicing through the noise. I just sold it yesterday. Silence. The shift in atmosphere was palpable, the clinking of glasses halting, conversations dying mid-sentence. Alan turned to me, eyes narrowing in confusion. What? I reached into my purse, pulling out the neatly signed documents, and held them up like a royal decree. I sold the house yesterday. A lovely young couple bought it. They're moving in next week. His face drained of color. His mother let out a gasp so dramatic it would have made a soap opera actress jealous, clutching at her chest as if the mere thought of displacement was enough to send her into cardiac arrest. "You can't do that," she screeched, voice shrill with outrage. Alan snatched the papers from my hand, his eyes darting over the fine print, his expression shifting from shock to horror. He read and reread the words, his fingers tightening around the pages as if holding them hard enough might change reality. "Tell me you're joking," he murmured, his voice hollow. I met his gaze, unwavering. "I'm not." The energy of the gathering had transformed. Where there had been laughter, there was now unease. Relatives exchanged glances, some stepping back as if distancing themselves from the unfolding disaster. Alan's uncle cleared his throat. "Well, this is unexpected." Alan exhaled sharply, his jaw tightening. "How could you do this? This was our home." I arched a brow. "Funny, because you were planning to sell it without telling me. What was I supposed to do? Wait until you slapped a for sale sign on the lawn and handed me the notice?" His lips parted as if to argue, but nothing came out. He had no defense. His mother, still clutching her chest like she might disappear into thin air, gasped dramatically. I can't breathe." I rolled my eyes. This woman had spent months faking illnesses for attention, and this was no different. But I knew better than to call her bluff in front of her adoring audience. Someone pressed a glass of water into her trembling hands. She took a small sip, shaking like a leaf. "This is too much," she croaked weakly. "My heart, my blood pressure." Alan whirled on me, eyes blazing. "Look what you've done." I lifted an eyebrow. "You mean, look what you did? You tried to sell our house behind my back. I just finished what you started." His jaw tightened, his voice low and dangerous. "This isn't over." I shrugged. "We'll see." Deborah, still playing the role of a dying woman, reached for Alan's sleeve, gripping it with frail desperation. "Get the papers," she whispered. "Find a way to undo it." I leaned down just enough so only she could hear me. "You know what's bad for blood pressure?" I murmured, my tone dripping with faux concern. "Stress. You might want to take it easy." Her eyes blazed with fury, but she was trapped. If she collapsed any further, she couldn't chase me down. If she miraculously recovered, she'd expose her charade. Checkmate. I left the reunion early, expecting Alan to stew in his anger for a few hours, maybe cool off. I was wrong. By the time I pulled into the driveway, his car was already there. The moment I stepped out of mine, he was storming toward me, his face twisted with barely contained rage. "We need to talk," he snapped. I walked right past him, unfazed. "No, you need to listen." He followed me inside, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. "I don't know what's gotten into you, but you can't just sell our house without talking to me." I turned sharply, my patience gone. "Oh, you mean like how you were planning to sell it without talking to me?" He flinched but recovered quickly. "That's different." A sharp laugh burst from my lips. "How?" "Because I was doing it for us." I scoffed. "No, Alan. You were doing it for her." His eyes darkened. "She's my mother. She needs a place to live." "Then she can buy one," I shot back. His fists clenched at his sides. "You don't get it, do you? Family takes care of each other." I let out a breath, shaking my head. "Oh, I get it. I just didn't realize I married a man who was married to his mother instead of me." The words hit their mark. His face twisted, his throat working as if he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He couldn't. "I can fix this," he muttered. I stepped closer, voice firm. "No, Alan. You can't." He let out a shuddering breath. "So that's it. You're just going to walk away from everything we built?" I narrowed my eyes. "Funny, you didn't have a problem doing that when you thought you were in control." Silence. Then his phone rang. We both looked at it. The screen flashed Mom. I smirked. "Go ahead. Answer it. I'll wait." He stared at the screen, his jaw tightening. I grabbed my purse. But not for long. And with that, I walked out. I drove straight to my lawyer's office, not just to finalize the house sale. No, I had bigger plans. Because while Alan had been scheming behind my back, I had been doing some digging of my own. And what I found? Well, it was going to cost him. By the time I pulled into the office parking lot, my hands were steady, my heart hammering not from fear, not from regret, but from cold, burning rage. I had spent years being ignored, dismissed, disrespected. Alan thought he could steamroll me into giving up my own home. No. I wasn't just walking away. I was burning the bridge behind me. I gripped the steering wheel one last time, then exhaled, grabbed my folder, and walked inside. Dan, my lawyer, was already waiting. "Tell me you have something," I said, dropping into the chair. Dan smirked, sliding a stack of documents across the desk. "Oh, I have something all right." And when I read them, I grinned. Because Alan, the man who thought he had outplayed me, he was about to lose a hell of a lot more than just the house. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "You know what's funny? I checked the withdrawals. Guess when they started?" Alan's Adam's apple bobbed. I leaned in, my voice barely above a whisper. "The same month she moved in." Busted. I should have been furious. I should have screamed, thrown something, made him feel the kind of betrayal that burned through me like acid. But all I felt was exhaustion. Alan wasn't just a bad husband, he was weak. A coward. A liar. A mama's boy who would rather stab his wife in the back than stand up to his own mother. And I was so over it. I grabbed my purse. Alan tensed. "Where are you going?" I smiled, slow and deliberate. "To make sure I take everything before you and Mommy dearest try to." His face darkened. "You can't just leave." I raised an eyebrow. "Watch me." His hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. "We can fix this." I yanked my arm free. "No. You can fix this. You can tell your mother to get her own house. You can kiss your secret bank account goodbye. You can learn how to live without me." His eyes flared with panic. "You don't mean that." But I did. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid to show it. I took a step back, memorizing the face of the man I once believed I had married. Then, without another word, I turned and walked out. I walked out that night, but I knew it wasn't over. Alan wasn't the type to let things go, especially when it meant losing control. For days, I ignored the flood of calls, the desperate texts, the pitiful voicemails filled with forced remorse. Then came the emails. The ultimatums. The threats. If I didn't fix this, he'd fight me on everything, our finances, our assets, anything he could use to make my life difficult. But I was ready for war. Alan thought he was clever, thought he could manipulate, gaslight, weasel his way into getting what he wanted. But he underestimated one thing. I had nothing left to lose. So when he called, demanding we meet at his mother's house, I agreed. Not because I wanted to reconcile, but because I was ready to end this. The moment I stepped inside, I knew it was a setup. Deborah sat on the couch, draped in false grief like some Victorian widow in mourning. Alan stood beside her, arms crossed, his posture stiff, trying to look intimidating but failing miserably. I took a seat. The performance began. "I just don't understand how you could do this," Deborah murmured, shaking her head like I had personally shattered her world. "After everything I've done for you." I laughed, sharp and humorless. "You mean after everything I've done for you? Hosting you in my house for 6 months. Cooking, cleaning, putting up with your constant insults." She sniffled. "I was just trying to help." Alan cut in, his voice tight. "We don't have to fight. We just need to find a solution." I crossed my arms. "The solution is simple. You two get your own place and leave me the hell alone." Alan's jaw clenched. "I can't just abandon my mother." I tilted my head. "Oh, but you can abandon me." Silence. Deborah, ever the drama queen, let out a shaky sigh. "I knew you were selfish," she whispered, "but I never thought you'd ruin my son's life." I pulled out my phone. "Press play." Alan's voice filled the room. "Just hold on, Mom. Once we sell the house, she won't have anywhere to go. She'll have to do whatever we say. I'll take care of everything. Just trust me. She won't know until it's too late." Deborah gasped. Alan went pale. I smiled. "Oops." Alan lunged for the phone, his expression twisting into raw desperation. How did you? I stepped back. "You think I'm stupid? I knew you were up to something. So I recorded everything. Every whisper. Every accidental slip. I held up the phone. And now I have proof. His face twisted in fury. No. You. I cut him off. You thought you could trap me. Thought you could make me homeless. Desperate. Dependent on you. I turned to Deborah. And you. You thought you could control me. That I'd be some obedient little wife, cooking and cleaning while you ruled my house. Alan opened his mouth, but I wasn't finished. I pulled out another set of papers. This, I said, is from my lawyer. Since the house was in my name, I don't owe you a damn thing from the sale. I smirked. I get to keep everything. Deborah actually screeched. Alan snatched the papers, flipping through them like they might magically rewrite themselves. His breathing grew shallow. This isn't fair. I smiled. Neither was your little plan. He threw the papers down, his face dark with rage. You're going to regret this. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, like how you regret getting caught. His fists clenched at his sides. Deborah rocked back and forth, sobbing as if she were the true victim in all of this. I grabbed my purse. Good luck with your new living arrangements, I said, heading for the door. Alan's voice was ice cold. You ruined everything. I glanced back one last time. No, Alan. You did. And with that, I walked out. Alan fought. Oh, he fought hard. He even tried to challenge the house sale in court. But legally, he didn't have a leg to stand on. He and Deborah ended up in a tiny apartment, a far cry from the home they had been planning to steal from me. I moved into a gorgeous downtown condo. My space. My freedom. My fresh start. And for the first time in years, I could breathe. Because when I looked around, I saw a home that was truly mine. And no one, not Alan, not his mother, not anyone, could take that from me. Some people say revenge isn't worth it. That it doesn't fix anything. But let me tell you something. Watching Alan and his mother scramble, watching their carefully laid plans crumble around them, that was the sweetest justice of all. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat.